Happy Monday, folks. Welcome back to After Hours. We've got another great episode today with a guy called Derek. You might know him better as Young Alcoholic. He's on Facebook and Instagram as Young Alcoholic. He is 14 years sober, coming up on 15. So he set up his account. He jokingly said he's going to have to change it to middle aged alcoholic now. But it's a great little account and a great guy. As I say, I came across him on Facebook rather than Instagram, which was quite odd. I get a lot of crap coming up on my feed, and his account popped up, and it's just really interesting, really great posts, full of kind of hope and his experience with 14 years under his belt. So, it was a really good conversation. Derek did have some pretty dark, kind of moments, in his life before he managed to turn the page, turn the corner, and get sober. I hope people take a lot from this as well. Derek was, more than a grey area drinker, from the name of his Instagram and Facebook suggests. He did use AA for a while, but he's kind of, did not step back from it, but just kind of not needing it as much as he did in the early days. So, it was a great support for him in the early days, as NA was for me. We had quite a similar kind of path as well. So you'll hear a lot of similarities between myself and Derek in the episode. We had a really good chat. It was a really good conversation. It was more backwards and forwards, but we do hear a lot about his story as well, and subsequently how his life has changed around. So yeah, as always, there might be a few trigger warnings in here, so take care when listening as always, but listen for the similarities and not the differences. And I'll be back at the end to have another little bit of a chat with you. Cheers, guys. Bye bye. Derek, or AKA Young Alcoholic, how are you today? Welcome to After Hours, mate.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I really appreciate being here. And yeah, it's been a great day so far, and kind of looking forward to chatting with you for the next little while.
Yeah, yeah, good. Well, thank you for giving up your time to do this. You're in Canada, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. I live in Winnipeg. It's right in the dead center of Canada.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's 10 in the morning here. I'm not sure what time you've got, but
We've just
my
got
day's
four.
just starting.
Yeah, we've just got 4 o'clock. So I've had a bit of a I've had a busy Saturday. But so what's the temperature over there right now? I mean, obviously it's coming into summer, but I always think of Canada as being pretty cold. But I'm sure you have seasons. So
Yeah, that's what most people think. But today, I think it's about 14 right now. And in a
mm.
day or two, it's supposed to be 34
Wow. Okay, so.
Celsius.
So you'll get hotter than what we get. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
think the day's about 15, but it doesn't go much past 20 here. I think we've had 24. Like even because I'm on the Isle of Man, which is separate from the UK. We're like a little island in the Irish Sea. I'm from
Yeah.
Scotland originally with the accent, but we like my friend lives over in the UK and he's getting like, up to 30s and we just get maybe 24. So it's hot enough for us when you get used to it, you kind of climatize, but yeah, so Derek, we'll want to hear a little bit about your childhood, how it was for you growing up, and when you had your first drink, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so I grew up, born and raised here in Winnipeg, and had two very loving and caring parents, and I have a younger sister as well. And pretty normal growing up, I thought, just comfortable living, and
Mm.
went to school and played sports, and just kind of did all these things that you think a young kid would do. And I actually didn't drink as early as a lot of people. I had my first drink when I was 18 years old.
Okay. And
And I
what's the
think it was
law?
right around, say again,
What's the law in Canada? Is it the same as the US? Is it 21 or is it 18?
18 here.
18, so same as the UK then, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you were a good boy and sticking to the law then, yeah, yeah.
I tried to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I started getting into it a little bit at 18 and wasn't too long that looking back, I realized the problems were just there from the start.
Hmm. And was that kind of manifested like, for myself, looking back, and don't get me wrong, I had some great times, but like I was always the one that would want to go to the after party or, like, what are we doing this weekend, right? Is there going to be booze involved? And I would always be like the instigator. Is that kind of how it was with you, or?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I just, and without knowing it or realizing it early on, because I just didn't really know what I was doing, but it just seemed like I was never satisfied. Like I just would
Yeah.
want to keep drinking and the party, people would start leaving and I'd stay. And it was just that, yeah, I wanted to be the last man standing
Yeah.
and I couldn't turn it off. And again, I didn't realize this when I was 18, you just chalked it up to partying and having fun and going
Hmm.
to clubs and just being a normal teenager. But like I say, looking back, I can remember my high school grad was probably the first time I drank and got really drunk, which
Hmm.
just right after I turned 18. And that night, I remember walking around and emptying other people's drinks into my cup towards the end of the night when the bar was closed,
Would
just
you do you
because I
guys
just wanted to keep.
do you guys have a name for that? Because we call it minesweeping.
Yeah, I don't know if there is a name, but that's
Yeah,
appropriate for
yeah,
sure. Yeah,
minesweeping.
it's just clearing up town for everybody. And
Yeah,
yeah, sick as could be the next day. And looking back, that was just a pattern that from the start was always there.
yeah. And I guess it's like, but like you're looking back now. How old are you, Derek?
I'll be 45 in a couple weeks.
Okay, so well, I've just turned 45, so the same kind of age and the same era.
Hmm.
Like growing up in the 90s and early noughties, it was like that was the done thing, and you're just young, you're partying, like we had obviously like Oasis and Britpop era with all the music and that, but there was also like the American Pie films, and it was that whole
Yeah.
kind of frat mentality. I don't know what it was like in Canada, but I'm, from watching films, that's what it was like in the US, like, chugging beers and doing beer pong and all that kind of stuff. So it was just the kind of era that we lived up in. And I'm not saying they didn't do those kind of things in the 70s and the 80s, but with the advent of like media and just being everywhere, you're seeing all this stuff going on, and you're like, I want to be part of that party. And so, we're not to blame for having, a bit of a kind of wild, early 20s and early young manhood. So it's kind of easy to look back and say, wow, I can see the problems. But at the time, yeah, you were just having fun. And so,
Yeah.
did you go to university, or or did you go straight to work, or what was your kind of life like that respect?
Yeah, it was when I was about 15 or 16, I got my first job at a grocery store in the neighborhood. Like I did reffing soccer, football, that kind of thing. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
started working at a grocery store and I was getting paid pretty well. And when I graduated high school, instead of going to college, I kept working at the grocery store. When I was 19, I think, I started taking flying lessons and I got
Yeah.
my pilot's license, my private license, and I did that till I was about 21. But by that point, my drinking was really starting to, take over my life.
Hmm.
And, I can remember going for a couple of flights just hung over as could be
Right.
and going with my flight instructor. And I remember one time I went and did an acrobatic style flight where,
Hmm.
or excuse me, it was instrument training. And I had to wear this hood over my face so I couldn't see outside. I could only see the airplane instruments.
Oh, wow.
And the instructor would kind of move the plane all over to put it out of whack. And I'd open my eyes, look at the instruments, and try and recover. And I was just so hungover that by the time we landed, like I was physically shaking.
Yeah.
Um, and so I just slowly but surely stopped, it was flying 3 times a week, then it was 2 times a week, then once every
So
2 weeks, and I just got out of it.
so instead of and this is where it's the insanity. Instead of giving up the booze, you gave up like sounds like one of your passions and one of your dreams. And yeah, instead of thinking, well, maybe instead of going up hungover, I'll stop drinking and I'll still go up. But I mean, to go back, like the fact that you were kind of hungover and feeling like crap, you were probably over the limit as well for driving. So taking a kind of vehicle up into the air is pretty heady with with alcohol in your system. But that's insane.
Yeah, it wasn't a good place for sure. And I'd never done it on like I'd never went flying on my own. It was always kind of this training, and it didn't have
Yeah.
that was sort of a wake up call, like, hey, what are you doing, buddy?
Hmm.
And yeah, like you say though, is the alcohol wins out. Like I start instead of giving up drinking, you give up the flying, you give up your career, your passion, your dreams,
Yeah.
and because alcohol just wins out.
It totally does, and that's the madness. And so then, how did that kind of manifest itself going forward, like in relationships and and then your jobs? What was so sorry you were doing the flight training, but was that wasn't your work, was it? No, that was separate from that.
No, yeah, that was just kind of an education. I was still working at this grocery store, which I
Hmm.
ended up working at for I think about 16 years. But
Okay.
throughout my 20s, I was very directionless, just kept drinking. I was in a couple of relationships that ultimately failed, and through no fault of my partner, at one point they would bring up the drinking, and I would defend it and turn everything around onto them. And,
Yeah.
because I was trying to protect the addiction,
Hmm.
I believe. And so they would
Yeah.
kind of come and go, those relationships. And it just was progressively getting worse. And then when I was 29, I had a really bad back injury working at this grocery store, and I
Oh.
had a disc protrusion. It caused me a huge deal of pain, and it put me off of work for almost 2 years.
Oh God.
And I went and saw a whole bunch of doctors. I could hardly walk. And eventually the doctor said, well, you're going to have to get a new job or a new career. I was heaving big produce boxes around for a living. And they said, you're going to have to get a new job. And I thought, oh, I have no education. What do I do? So it was
Yeah.
finally then I went back to college when I was 30.
Right. Okay. Okay. To do
Yeah.
what?
Civil engineering technology.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, that's a massive step. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. I didn't know what to do.
I do have, we've got a kind of mirroring life here because I did a bit of college when I was, left school. I did a bit of photography and worked in that, but like through alcohol and different things, I would lose jobs or I would have lack of ambition. So I did go back to university in my 30s to do film studies, which, again, it's really hard to get jobs in that. I didn't finish it because of
Mm.
alcohol, but I'm guessing you finished the civil engineering degree course, yeah.
Yeah. So my first year, so it would have been 2010, 11.
Hmm.
I was in my first year of college, still drinking, brutal, like just heavily. And I was working at the grocery store, going to school Monday to Friday, working weekends and evenings,
Hmm.
and drinking like crazy. And at the end of that first year, I remember writing these exams, and I failed two of them. I was
Right.
quite, I don't know, embarrassed, ashamed,
Yeah.
but I didn't prepare. I was still drinking heavily. And I worked a summer co-op, and I was still drinking. And I went on a bender, missed a couple of days of work, didn't show up, didn't call. And I got put on kind of a final notice. By that point with the grocery store, I think I'd signed 3 union agreements saying I wouldn't drink anymore because I'd missed some time.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And it was just, yeah. And so what happened is I went to both employers after I missed a few days, said, all right, I'm not going to drink anymore.
Hmm.
But I didn't get the help I needed. And for the next month I kept drinking, trying to hide it. And it ended with like a 4 day binge where I was staying in a hotel. I was kind of just on the run, drinking and that. And I woke up and I was like, why am I in this situation again? Previously, I'd had an 8 month run of sobriety, and I was
Okay.
now back into this relapse scenario. And I thought, why am I here? And what I've missed was the peace and calm that I had during that 8 months of sobriety.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so finally, for the first time, I wanted to quit for myself.
Yeah.
And that's the last time I drank. And then from there, I finished, graduated college, got a good job, bought a house, started traveling again. And it was just all,
Yeah.
upwards, like good progress from there.
It's bizarre because, well, it's not bizarre. It's quite evident from myself and from people I speak to that once they give up the alcohol or whatever it is that's causing them issues in their life, everything starts coming together. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
absolutely crazy. Like that if we'd done that, you know, when it was starting to become an issue, like life would have been just so much better. But we, like you did, you defend it, we defend it, um, we we want to like, and like I was thinking when you were saying about the relationships, like I did that as well, and I ended up getting really bitter because I was feeling like it was almost like I was gaslighting myself. I was like saying to them, "Oh, it's your fault. It's this and that." And then it was like they were making out that it was my fault. And then I'd get really depressed because they'd left me. And then I would drink on that. And it was like, poor me, pour me a drink type thing. And it's just this horrible, horrible, cycle of hell that we get locked into. And like what you were saying about university over in the UK, we have a thing called Freshers Week here. Now I was in my 30s, so I didn't really get involved in it, but I don't know if you know what Freshers Week is. So
No.
Freshers Week is the first, and I believe they still do it, which is just madness. The first week at university, it's basically they have all of these alcohol-fueled parties in all the pubs around the city of the university, and it's just basically encouraging all these kids who have literally just left home. And I'm sure a few of them have had a drink before, but a lot of them won't have. They're just 18, so they're just legally allowed to drink, and they're like just plying them with offers on drinks. And, there was a thing, I think it was up in Newcastle a few years ago, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was some kind of challenge they were doing. And it was like, how many shots can you have? And we're talking like 20, 25 shots in one sitting. And like a few kids died. You know what I mean? It was that kind of, dangerous. But and I know it's not the universities that are doing it. It's just encouraged because the bars and clubs can then make money off the kids and then get them hooked for their whatever years they're there. So I don't know if like you said, it was hard drinking at uni for you, but is the same kind of mentality over in Canada as well? Yeah,
Yeah, we have that for sure. Even though I didn't go to university when I turned 18 and 19, most of my friends did.
yeah,
And I used to go to the
yeah,
campus for like
yeah,
the first week and part because they had the beer bashes, they were
yeah,
called here, and these outdoor parties and kegers. And I would go to the university just hanging out, partying all day long.
yeah. Same.
So we
Yeah,
definitely had it there. By the time I went back in my 30s, I went out drinking with some of the classmates a few times. It was definitely at the worst of the worst of my drinking. But because I was quite a bit older than most, there was just a bit of a disconnect there with
yeah.
the socializing and that. There was some beer events, but I didn't go. And by that point, my drinking, I would drink on my own without giving it a thought. So I really didn't need drinking buddies in that at that stage.
Yeah. It seems to be across the board when the alcohol becomes a big issue. It's this, well, what is it? Someone said it's the disease of disconnect. So it wants you on its own, on your own. It doesn't want you to be with other people who might possibly say, "Oh, do you think you're drinking too much?" It just wants you on your own. And that was the same with me. When it got to its worst, I was with my ex-partner, and but I would just drink almost in secrecy. I wouldn't want them to know how much I was drinking, and we would still be having wine, but I would be hiding vodka in the bathroom and in the cistern and all these things. And it was, and then eventually, like our relationship wasn't great towards the end because of the alcohol, but I basically made the decision to leave her because I was like, almost like you're getting in the way of my drinking. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna, rather than have a, potentially happy life, I'm gonna leave you so that I can continue drinking with my buddy alcohol. It was, yeah, it's just everything and anything you want out the way. So like I was the same. Like even though I was 32 when I went back to uni, um, like I went to a few parties and things like that, but I was just preferred to go. I didn't ever have a problem going and sitting in a pub on my own and chatting to the local barflies or whatever. That was like even from like 18, 19, I'd never had this kind of anxiety because I always had a drink in me. But like I'd never had the anxiety of going and sitting and waiting in a pub for friends to come. Like I have friends that would say, "What time are you getting there? Are you going to be there when I arrive? Because I don't want to walk into a pub on my own." I'd be like, "Well, I've been here for an hour, dude. So yeah, come on down." You know what I mean? So, what would you say was your? And it sounds like that 4 day bender that you went on towards the end. How, like, was that your darkest moment? And what was the kind of crux that made you think I need to do something about this?
Yeah, well, prior to that, it's so funny listening to you talk because it's just like, I don't know, we grew up together.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like, so I'm just like, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
I think we're
Um,
all kindred spirits, and that's why I love doing the podcast because like the stories that I hear like in the rooms and on Instagram, and I'm just like I need to we need to more people because I love how when friends of mine and people I know that they're listening to the podcast and they don't have problems with alcohol, but it's opening their ears a little bit to the plight and where for some people they could end up. Do you know what I mean? And I love that because we're all on this side of the fence now talking about it and going, yeah, man, it was some mad, mad times. But we all have to seem to have the similarities in our stories. So anyway, yeah, sorry, carry on.
and you're right, because I think a lot of people think, well, why don't you just quit? Like, and then it's like, well, it's not that easy when you hear of the insanity it pushes you
Yeah,
towards. It's
yeah.
not like, oh, I'll just stop.
I'll just
But
stop.
to
Yeah.
go to your question of what it was, so I would, on and off, tried to quit for a week, a month, show a girlfriend that, hey, look, I'm in control. I didn't drink all last week.
Yeah.
And I'd have these kind of sporadic periods of sobriety. Right before my last big relapse, I had 8 months of sobriety. And, the first couple of weeks were painful, slow going. Like I always
Mhm.
say, and I write like in my young alcoholic there,
Yeah, yeah.
like you don't quit on Tuesday and life is miraculous on Wednesday.
If
It
only,
takes
if
a while
only,
to rebuild the confidence. Sorry?
if only it was that easy. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It takes a while to build trust, rebuild
yeah.
relationships, so I'd had 8 months of sobriety. So I patched things over at work. Life was better. I was happy. And then my buddies and I were going on this golf trip.
Hmm.
And it was going to be this weekend. And I thought, you know what? And they knew I drank a lot, but they didn't know the depths of it. And I
Yeah,
thought, I'm going to drink on this golf trip. I'm going to leave it out of town, come home, and business as usual, back to sobriety. So
right.
went on the golf trip, came back, was just drinking nonstop when I got back. And that led me to missing a couple days of work. And like I said, I told them I'd stop drinking, but then I had about a month where I was still drinking, trying to keep it to weekends and evenings. And then it culminated in this 4 day bender where I just woke up in bed and I was scared,
Mhm.
because I'd missed 2 days of work again. I didn't phone in, no, not just,
Just
absent.
AWOL, AWOL. Yeah,
Yeah. And laying there thinking, why am I in this situation? Of course, physically feeling
yeah.
like garbage,
Hmm.
but mentally just drained and
Hmm.
thinking like I don't want to do this anymore. Why am I here? I hate it. Like I just with a passion, I hate this feeling.
Hmm.
And I hate this scenario and situation that I'm in for the thousandth time. And that was a catalyst for me wanting to get better. Fortunately, my work was like, fine, this is your last straw. You got to go to AA and whatnot. So it helped get me in the door and stay. But it was finally a desire to do it for myself that really helped.
Yeah. And that's the key because I spent a bit of time in rehab, did the usual the 28 days, and it was just when the UK went into the first lockdown in 2020.
Mm.
And they were saying to us, the key workers and counselors were saying, when you do this, you've got to get sober for you. This is like the last selfish thing you'll do, but you have to do it for yourself. And I was like, yeah, 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 I'm going to do it for myself. And I wasn't. I was trying to do it for like my ex, and because I
Yeah.
had still had hope that there was something there, and but I didn't know what I wanted. But I was like, I wasn't doing it for myself. And then when I did get sober finally, because I came out and I was fine for like 55 days, and then I relapsed and it was horrendous, and that's another story. But then when I did get sober the last time, it was for myself. And so you're saying they kind of like not forced you but pushed you towards AA. So is that what your kind of recovery method was then? Yeah,
Yeah, it was, and I'd been in and out of AA. If I mean, I don't want to say in and out like it's an open door. You can go any
of course.
time, any
Yeah.
day. But it definitely. I've been in and out of the rooms a bit prior to that because I was again trying to prove like to people like, all right, I'll get better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had to go back and sort of. I kept going every day, and for me, yeah, it being in those rooms, listening to the stories, it was like you and I talking and sharing and not to disclose AA, but people are sharing and talking, and I
Hmm.
just think of it as now like-minded people that
Yeah.
understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And what it was is I'd hear somebody share a little story or a saying, and it would resonate with me. I'd really relate to something, and it was stuff like that that just really helped me kind of find my footing
Yeah.
and keeping at it, going in. It made me accountable. And I remember sitting in the rooms, especially early on, and somebody'd get up and talk and they'd have 10 years of sobriety, 20 years of sobriety. And to me, that seemed like an impossible feat. Like, how do I get to that level? Like,
Yeah.
how do you do it? It's just magical when you hear someone.
Yeah.
And, here I am 2 days, feeling like just a
Still
doofus.
rattling. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
just, and it just seeming like there was no hope. Like I was just treading in the middle of the ocean by myself.
Hmm.
But then you hear people talk and you realize, all right, other people get what I'm going through. It is possible. And you start kind of building some hope and confidence. And a lot of the stuff that, this one day at a time, what is that? Now you get it, what it means. And
Yeah.
pretty soon I made it a few weeks, then a month. And then I had a birthday and I didn't drink. And then it was Christmas and I didn't drink and New
Hmm.
Year's. And all of a sudden you're like, all right, I did, all these things you worried about on day one. Like, yeah, what am I going to do at that wedding this summer? What's going to
Yeah.
happen when I go to this party and
Yeah.
Peter offers me a beer? What do I do at this work event?
Yeah.
But you get through it and you realize
Yeah.
it's not such a big deal.
Yeah. And you get through
And
it
it was
because
just,
of,
I
sorry, go on.
was going to say, and you start building this kind of
Yeah.
steam and you realize it's not the biggest deal in the world that Derek goes to an event and doesn't have a drink.
Because we start to realize nobody gives a shit what we're doing.
Yeah.
Like nobody, they
Yeah.
all they care about is what's in their glass and how they're feeling and how drunk they're going to get or not drunk, whatever. They don't actually care. Like, you might get a few of your diehard drinking buddies if you had any of them. I didn't have any of them at the end, and it was like if you say to them, like I've heard a few stories from people that like they had that one person that they could always count on to go down the pub or
Mm.
go and take drugs with or whatever. And when they told them that they were giving up, and it was like almost like they've destroyed like a marriage. Do you know what I mean? It was like, what are you doing to me? But after a while, they get over it and they find someone else. Like looking back, a lot of my drinking buddies were they weren't close friends. We didn't have big, deep and meaningful chats. The people that I've met in sobriety, I've got much more of a connection with than people that I drank with. And so for me, I didn't do AA. I tried AA over here, but it wasn't the right group for me, if that makes sense. But I did. We have a charity over here called Motivate, with an eight for people that are listening, and with a number eight. And one of the guys who works there, he did Narcotics Anonymous while he was in rehab. So he uses their facilities to hold his own meeting. So, for me, I was like, well, drugs weren't a big problem. He said, no, no. He said, it's NA. Alcohol's a drug. You're more than welcome to come along. Whereas with AA, if you've got a drug problem, I don't think they really kind of know what to do with that. So they're like, just alcohol. But with NA, it was a great when I started hear people saying about you found your tribe and listen for the similarities. It was all of these things like coming out, and it was. I think the first couple of meetings I didn't really share. I maybe just said a few things. My name's Jimmy and I'm an addict, and then after about two or three meetings, I needed the meetings because it was like I wasn't really working at that point and I needed to go and just be with my people because it was like, these people are going through the same thing as me. But like you, one of the guys was like, you know, I think he was 8 years at that point. He's a good friend. I was doing some gardening with him today, and he'd been 8 years, and then I think he was on 2 years, and there was a few kind of long termers there, and I was just like, this is unfathomable for me at this point. But then there was a couple of guys that would walk in. One was the same as me, at like 3 months, and then another was like I think 6 months ahead of me or something. So it was like that was more attainable and that was more comforting to me. And also, like what you're saying, if you're wanting to gain like 10 years, you're also adding 10 years to your life. So, I'm quite happy that, I'm
Yeah,
only
yeah.
I'm only at 5 years at this point because, you know, you're just kind of aging yourself prematurely, aren't you? So do you still go to the meetings, go to the rooms?
I haven't been in a while. Aside from I went last, and if your listeners like, please don't always like follow my advice
Yeah.
because some people need it every day until they're 90.
Yeah, yeah.
But for me, I had a friend who was struggling, and I said, "Oh, I'll go to some meetings with you."
Yeah.
So that got me to go back. But to be honest, I stopped going maybe 3 or 4 years after I quit. It just sort of petered off, and then I started working on Young Alcoholic very long time ago. And in my, I don't know, looking at that, I think that was sort of my way of participating in the alcoholic community, staying connected, but just in a different way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so I haven't been, but that's not to tell people not to go. I think, you need to do whatever you need to do to get sober. And if that's going to 4 meetings a day, every day till you're, 60, to do that because it's worth it.
Yeah.
And, don't trade it off. And, it's just funny how you say like, going into those meetings, it was a bit intimidating too at first because I was one of the younger ones in the crowd,
Hmm. Hmm.
going in at 30, and I was surrounded by people 40, 50 plus were dominating the room.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I remember thinking like, so, and a bit of a derogatory. I was like, so this is my crowd now, like looking around the room thinking like, look at all these addicts, these drunks, and I'm in here, like, Derek the Great is in here.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, yeah, that's my crowd. Like with
Yeah.
passion, I think it because a guy once said in that meeting, like, yeah, this is the where the winners are. And you
Yeah.
just hear these little things, but it makes sense. Like these are the
Yeah.
people that aren't still in a pub staring at the bottom of a glass wasting away. That's no insult to them. My heart goes out to the people that are out there still struggling.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But you
remember
find your way and yeah.
I remember going to and I was the same as you. I think I did the 90 meetings in 90 days, not because we had that many meetings over here, but we had we had a thing called SMART, we had NA, we had CA, and I think I was still doing AA at that point as well because I was just like, give me it all. I'm not working. We're kind of in lockdown. And then at the weekends I was going on Zoom and I could do Zoom meetings around the world. So I was an addict on that as well. I was just like, give me all the meetings because I was just feeling this like they were giving me this energy and this kind of life force back. And I remember I think it was after the first year and we'd gone into like a full-on lockdown again and we couldn't get in the rooms to have the meetings. So we decided to take it out. We were allowed to meet out in parks and, nature and that. So we decided to go to this little wooded area, like part of the island. And I remember thinking, like, it wasn't any of the guys in my meetings, but I remember reading, literature and things like that. And it was about the fellowship. And it was like, if you don't get to a meeting, chances are you're going to relapse and this, that, and the other. It was like that whole mentality. And I was just a bit like, well, what if this lockdown lasts longer and I can't get to a meeting? And it just something snapped in my brain, and I was like, I need to move on to phase two of my recovery now, because I need to not be relying on these meetings, because if I can't get to a meeting, or what if I move to a different place, locality, and like the meeting's not the same people? And do you know what I mean? There was all these things where I was
Mm,
like, I know it's there, and it's there if I need it.
yeah.
And I've popped back to see the guys, and I'm still very close with a lot of them. So it's kind of that whole, it's there if I need it, but I needed to move on to some other part of my recovery. And it's like what you say, it's individual. So some people, that's what they need until they're 90, until the day they die or whatever. But for me, I just needed to do something a bit different. And like yourself with Young Alcoholic, with my page Recovery Jimmy, it's keeping me in that community, keeping me
Hmm.
steeped in it. I now work for I do some part-time work for Motivate, the charity. I got trained to be a peer mentor last year, and we've just kind of started doing these kind of classes and stuff now, which is great, and people are getting a lot from that. And I have to stay in the community, because I think that if you do stray from it, and that's fine. Some people, they give up alcohol or drugs, and then they don't want to talk about it again, and that's fine, and that's on them. But for me, it's like, I love the community, and I love hearing the stories, sharing the stories. And yeah, it's just I guess trying to tell people there is hope and there is support, and
Yeah.
that's what I got from the rooms and what I get from Instagram. It's just a really good supportive community, and if people are struggling, then they need to know that they're not alone, and that's kind of where it's kind of at. And so yeah, I started following. I think most of my link into recovery stuff is on Instagram, but I found you on Facebook, which was quite bizarre, because I don't really have a lot of. I've got a Facebook account, but I don't share a lot of recovery stuff on there. And it was just your page kind of popped up. You know how you get a lot of crap on Facebook, you do on Instagram.
Yes.
And it's like,
Yes.
why am I, this isn't even in English. I can't read this. Why is it suggested for me? But you came up, and I was like, this guy's got a really cool account. So tell us, yeah. So tell the listeners how many years sober you are.
Yeah, so it'll be 15 years sober coming up, I think in August, or excuse me, 14 years sober in August.
Wow. And what date in
And
what date in August?
I think August 5th.
Oh, I'm the 19th. So yeah, cool, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
It's
coming up
like
for
the 5th
5
or
years.
6th.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
tried to remember, but it's that period was a bit of a blur.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well
And
done on 15, 14 and a bit years, man. Yeah, well done.
well, thanks. And yeah, it was kind of during school. I got the idea of young alcoholic, and and it was more to probably get out of studying. I was like, I needed a,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
sick about reading
Procrastination,
about
procrastination.
hydrology.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And I made the page, and I was, I started with these grandiose ideas like I'm going to have video chats and web broadcasts and resources and links and then I spent more time trying to figure out how to build a website than I did uploading content, and it kind of lost steam. And
Hmm.
I made a few social media accounts. And then a few years later, I revisited it, and it was only this. And then again, I fell off the social media wagon and
Yeah.
stopped engaging. And it was only this last year I really started doing the posts again, writing blogs and connecting. I'm 45. When I was 20, social media wasn't a thing. I
No.
struggle keeping up with it a little bit. I'm not on my phone all the time. I'm not,
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
try to find now a healthy balance of social media engagement while also playing guitar, going to the gym, riding my bike,
Yeah.
playing with my girlfriend's kid, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
cooking good food. It's a
Life.
balance for me.
Yeah, there's so many other things to do in life. And I mean, I remember, sorry to digress, but I remember someone said to me when I stopped drinking, they were like, "Well, what are you gonna do? Like, what are you doing at the weekend?" It's like everything fucking else. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
whole there's a whole life out there that's not just sitting propping up a bar. So, but like, yeah, what you're saying, like, 14, nearly 15 years ago, social media was about, but it wasn't as dominated by, all these different kind of communities and cultures. And obviously now we have lives on Instagram and things like that. So, good on you for setting that up back then. But obviously it was only in its kind of infancy, I guess, 15 years ago. So yeah, it's amazing that you've kind of taken a break and then kind of come back when I suppose the technology has kind of caught up with what you were initially wanting to do with it. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a mixed blessing because I see people that started out around me now and they got 60,000 followers and,
Mm.
and now it just seems like what I was doing at the start. Now there's a million pages that are, similar. But
Yeah.
I just kind of like, it's my own pace. I'm not making this a full-time job. I'm not a professional blogger.
Yeah.
I don't have internet web design training. I do
Yeah.
it because I enjoy it and I enjoy connecting with people. And, I could get 100 likes, but what I really have appreciated over time is when people have direct messaged me and said, "Hey, I've been reading a few pages. I appreciate what you're doing," or "I
Mhm.
connect," or "Thanks for the inspiration." That's what makes it worthwhile is when you really make those one-on-one connections.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you know, to me, getting 1,000 likes is, it's good for business, but it's nice helping people
Yeah.
and
That's what
connecting
that's
with people.
that's what I do it for as well. It's not for, and I guess some people make money out of it, but that's, I have a job and, I have a roof over my head
Mhm.
and I've got a happy life and it's not for that. And it's like to be able to like you say, connect with people. And like, I've met loads of, and I haven't met them face to face, but met them online, and it's just great having that connection. You say, oh, so and so's up to this, and they're doing that. And there's so many different like events. Like I'm a bit bummed that I live in the Isle of Man, and it's not difficult to get to the UK, but it's it's a
Yeah.
it's a roundabout way to get a ferry or the plane. And but I see a lot of events going on to places that I used to live, and I'm like, oh man, I could have gone to that and things like that. So I guess what it kind of makes me think is maybe I should start doing these events over here. So it's how is the kind of sober community over in Canada? Do you guys have a lot of like alcohol-free drinks and things like that around?
It's getting better, I would say for sure. I have a friend who lives on the west coast of Canada. I would go visit him, and we'd go out to he drinks, and I'm fine around it.
Yeah.
And we go to a pub, and I found there they would have a lot more options for non-alcoholic drinks. This is going back 5, 6, 7 years,
Hmm.
but now even where I live, there's way more options. You're not just stuck to soda or
Yeah,
cola.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
There's a lot more mocktails, no alcohol kind of drinks,
yeah,
and which definitely makes it easier to go out. I know that was one of the awkward struggles when you first quit. It's like everyone's got a beer, in their bottle in their hand, and I'm holding a soda
yeah, yeah.
plastic cup. Like you just stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah. Well, you
And
think you
yeah,
do.
but
The
now
the
it's a lot.
actual
Or you do,
reality
yeah.
is, but it's that mental thing and it's that anxiety. It's like, oh, somebody sees me with a soda and lime, and it's like, but like over here, like even in the 5 years that I'm sober, like it's just rocketed. It used to only be like I think you'd get Beck's Blue and Heineken Blue, and that was it. But now there's Guinness Zero, which is like amazing. I mean, I don't use them as much as I used to anymore. But like if I go for a meal and they've got Guinness Zero on tap or whatever, then I'll have one of them, and it's almost like the real thing, but you can have five and drive, so it's crazy. Yeah.
It's funny you say that. I was just this morning before this working on an article about alcohol-free beer, and should or shouldn't I. It's
Hmm.
something I've never tried. And again, it's sort of this, what are you comfortable with scenario,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the same as people quit drinking, but they'll still smoke marijuana or, and
Hmm.
I don't judge. I always think, do you? And
Yeah.
as long as you're living a better life, and
Yeah.
you're not, and it's not having a negative impact on your life, all the
Then
power
what?
to you.
Exactly, and that's the whole thing. I don't have a problem with people drinking or like you're saying, smoking marijuana. Marijuana was never a big issue for me. In fact, I think I gave it up when I was 22 because I started getting a bit paranoid with it. And I'd smoked it a few times in my later years, but I was like, I'd always go, why have I done that? And I'll have another drink to try and douse out whatever. numbness that the weed had given me. But like for me, I'm just completely abstinent now. So, I don't think that if I was to smoke weed, it would lead me back down that path. But I just don't want to, and that's the kind of thing. So, yeah, but going back to the alcohol-free stuff, I remember they said to us in rehab, like, oh, you should be very careful. I wouldn't recommend using alcohol-free stuff. So I didn't for like the first year. I heeded that advice, and I knew people that were using it as a massive crutch. They were like,
Mm.
and then getting frustrated because they were going out and they were like white knuckling it and drinking these alcohol-free things, but getting nothing from it because it's like it's not got alcohol in it. I mean, it's got a tiny amount, but and then they're getting frustrated, but then they've got the flavor for it, and it's like So I can see that they can be dangerous for some people, but you've got to work out what where your head's at. And like for me, like after doing them, like after being sober for a year, I was kind of like, I got a tattoo with my sobriety date on it, and I joked because it's on my wrist, and I was like, well, I can score it off if I need to. My arm's long, but I knew that this time it was I'd done. Do you know what I mean? I was like,
Yeah,
so that's
yeah, yeah.
that's why I got it done after 3 months. But after a year to then have an alcohol-free drink, I was like, yeah, I can take it or leave it. I'm not going to have them in the house where on a Tuesday evening I'm just going to have an alcohol-free beer because why? I might as well drink water. It's going to be better
Right.
for me. Yeah. Um, so Derek, if you could go back to like when alcohol really started becoming an issue in your life, and say someone said to you, you've got two paths, you can go on the path that you're on right now, having all those issues with the alcohol, or you could completely take a different path and take a completely abstinent path. Which one would you take?
That's such a hard question because to take the alcohol-free path would have saved me years of agony and
Yeah,
grief and misery. But I'm so grateful for where my life is right now
yeah,
that it would be hard to go back and change it. Like it's almost shaped me into who I am. I mean, alcohol took a lot away from me, but sobriety has given me strength and confidence and a different appreciation towards life. It's made me more empathetic. And I think sometimes, I needed those tough lessons to, find my way, learn who I am, and really enjoy life to the best of my ability. So, yeah, it would be nice to go and erase some of the
yeah,
chaos that I caused.
yeah.
Absolutely. But even in sobriety, I've tried to do that. I had three kind of longer term relationships of about 2 years each.
Hmm.
I reached out to those people years after and was just like, I'm sorry for
Yeah,
everything. I wasn't like, I'm sorry, but you were also kind of difficult. It was just a flat out,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
listen, I'm
Making
sorry
amends,
for,
making amends. Yeah.
yeah, I don't reply. I'm not doing this because I want you to forgive me. And so I, accepted my past for what it is.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm good with it now. Like it's too bad it happened, but it did. And it's not like it was just 10 years of pure misery. There was a lot of great moments along there too. And so yeah, not to skirt your question, it would be tough to say. But
Yeah,
with all of that said, if I met someone and they're 23 and they're drinking every day and they thought it was a problem, I wouldn't tell them to wait 10 years to get help. I would tell them get
yeah,
help now,
yeah, yeah. And I think,
you know.
everyone that I've asked on the podcast that question, it's exactly the same. They want to stay. It's a tough question, but they wanted to stay where they're at because of the life like lessons that they've learned, the lived experience. And yeah, like a few have said that, they would go back and, maybe change the hurt and anguish that they've caused family, friends, loved ones, but they wouldn't want to, go and be someone else if that was the case. So yeah, no, and it's like, there's no right or wrong answer. For me, it's there's a cat about to jump up and attack me. No,
Yeah,
I'm
I
I'm I'm
saw him at the
I'm busy.
start in the background. I'm
Yeah,
jealous.
did you see the little tail walker? I don't know why it's like the door's open, go outside. It's a beautiful day, but she's like, no, I want to annoy you. So, if she does
Yeah.
jump up, you'll see her. This is Poppy. Hold on, you coming? There you
Well,
go.
there's a push around my house from my girlfriend and her son to get some kind of animal.
Oh,
I'm dreading the day I come home and there's a turtle or a dog leaping
and
around.
do you live with your girlfriend now then? Yeah.
Yeah, they moved into my house last year.
And so I mean, that's the thing. My fiance she's got three kids, one cat. So I came here with my two cats. So we've got a bit of a blended family going on at the moment, which is amazing. It's great, but we're all just kind of trying to. I mean, I've only been in here 3 weeks, so we're all just kind of trying to find our little place. They've actually gone away for the weekend, so I've just been kind of catching up with house duties and things like that. To show that I'm a domesticated,
Yeah, yeah. You're a responsible
a
guy, aren't you?
responsible future husband to be. So yeah. So Derek, any what advice would you give to people that were kind of maybe sober curious or literally just starting out on their kind of sober journey?
Well, what I've always sort of over the years, people have asked me like, "Well, do you think I'm an alcoholic?" Because they drink or they got drunk one weekend and that. And I just say, look, do you think alcohol's having a negative impact in your life?
Hmm.
And that's my best definition of should I get some help or not? Is it after, are you missing work? Is it impacting your relationships? Are you laying in bed all weekend? Are you know, your health deteriorating because you're not eating well? Like, is alcohol having a negative? And if yes, maybe you've got an issue, maybe you need some help.
Hmm.
And so I think back to when I was 26, I'd start flipping through those questionnaires. You're an alcoholic if A, B,
Yeah, yeah,
you answer yes to three reasons. If you're wondering, don't be ashamed to ask for help
yeah, yeah. I like that.
because you save yourself a world of grief if you quit drinking at 25 and not 35 or 45.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like I quit drinking at 40, you were what, 30, and it's like, and I'm so glad that I did it at 40 rather than 50 or 60. But then, I've had people in the podcast that were like 50 or 60, and I know people in the rooms, and like whatever age they do it at, it's as I say, it's never too late to, even if you're 60, it's like, what's the point in giving up now? No, no, give up. The life, you still got life, and life can be so much better rather than just whittling away the last few years of what you've got left in, absolute depression and if eventually pain and agony, because it's not a nice way to go if you do succumb to it. I was watching I don't know if you know Andy Ramage. He's
Yeah.
quite big on the Instagram over here, and he did a post this morning, a reel, and it was about how the WHO, the World Health Organization, basically they put alcohol as one of their number one carcinogens in 1988. So it's up there with asbestos, tobacco, and radiation as a number one carcinogen. And why does not everybody know about that? And that's the kind of dangerous part of it. It's like they know that this is a killer, but because there's so much money coming in from it,
Mm.
because it's this socially acceptable drug, we're just kind of still kind of hiding the fact that it's a really dangerous drug and that people are just dousing themselves in it all the time. So, as much as I like what you said there in that whole phrase, like if you think there's a problem with alcohol, then there's probably a problem with alcohol in your life. And if it is have a negative impact, then yeah, give it up. But also it's there's nothing in it that's doing you any good, and that's the kind of I had no idea how bad alcohol was. I thought, yeah, if I continue drinking till I'm like 60 or 70, then yeah, it might have an impact. No, it's having an impact straight away. So, that's the kind of thing that like I want to try and hit home to people. It's not just this fun recreational thing that yeah, you might feel a bit shit the next day. It does last and it does cause issues. So what would you say were the rewards of being sober, Derek?
Oh, it's just endless. I mean, I achieved more in, a year of sobriety than I had in all of my time drinking. I mean, just this is a better life. And actually, a buddy of mine made a comment to me once, and he's like, I remember years ago I asked you and you said it. And he's like, I told him it's just a better life for me.
Yeah.
Like I'm functioning. I've like this. It's well 11 here now, but this morning I've already been for a 5 kilometer walk. I
Yeah,
had a breakfast, made a coffee. I fed my girlfriend's son. All of this before 10 o'clock. Like
yeah,
my life is just better and I'm enjoying it thoroughly. I mean, I'm healthier. I exercise. I've been traveling like crazy. I was just
yeah.
in Dominican Republic, Thailand last year, Crete
Nice.
last summer, and I'm going to Spain in a couple of weeks
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
holiday. Own a house, I have a vehicle, I'm financially stable. I'm like all of this stuff. Healthy
Hmm.
relationship, just grateful,
Yeah,
good family. Like it's just endless. And we wouldn't trade that for the world. And so the benefits of sobriety, if and they're hard to see when you're in the thick of addiction,
yeah,
is
yeah.
you don't envision that. You just are worried about getting to the pub tonight and getting hammered.
Yeah, yeah. And like you say, like waking up the next day, you probably won't get out of your bed or even waking up until about 11, 12 o'clock. So you've done all this morning. And if you were hammered and, the night before and hanging the next day, all I could think of was like, where's my drink coming from this morning, to make myself feel better. And that's when it's like the dangerous part that we call it the
Oh
hair of
yeah,
the dog over here. And
yes.
it's a slippery slope when you start doing that because I did start feeling like I was, coming into my 40s when I gave up. And it was the hangovers, which probably weren't even hangovers at that point. It was more withdrawal. I was starting to get the shakes and the DTs and, sweats and all
Mm.
that. So it was, I mean, I had to be medically,
Sweat.
yeah, I had to be medically detoxed like I think two or three times. And it was yeah, when it gets to that point, all I knew to make myself feel better at that point was more alcohol, and it's not a place that I ever want to be again. And I think somebody said to me like, you can look back, on your kind of past, but only glance, don't stare. But always remember how you felt that last time before you got sober, because don't forget that. That's what keeps you grounded, and that's what keeps you kind of keep going forward.
And I think that's the danger in early sobriety and why people relapse is you remember the highlight reels, the
Yeah,
the
yeah.
fun times, the concert, the weekend with your buddies. You remember these great moments and you don't play the tape to the end.
Yeah.
And now I just remember exactly how I felt when I was laying in that bed that day, begging God and the powers above to get me out of this situation.
Hmm.
And I never want to be in that situation again.
No, I'm exactly the
And it's
same.
funny, I still have the dreams. You wake up the odd morning and you had a dream that you drank
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
feels so real. Like those
yeah.
to me are just stark wake up reminders as to why I don't drink. That and social media. I have a few accounts and you see, people are always posting day 59, day 200,
Hmm.
and you see the odd day one and someone's relapsed and I read their little thing
Yeah,
and I think I feel for them and I'm also grateful that's not me.
yeah. It's
Because the
funny you
thought of
say that.
starting over,
Oh, I was
I don't
talking
have it
to.
in me.
Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day, and her episode will be on in a few weeks, Victoria, and she was saying like when she knew this time it was the time, and she said, "I know I'm never going to have a day 6 again, or I'm never going to have a day 7 again." She knew that this was the last time she was going to have a day 42 because she just knew. But like I'm the same as you when I see those day ones come up on Instagram or Facebook, and I'm like, "Oh my God!" And I always make a point to go and comment just to give them
Me
that
too.
little
Yeah.
boost because I'm like,
Yeah.
these are the most important people that I need to speak to. Like the guys that have got like, 3,000 days, they're doing all
Yeah.
right. They're not,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
not, they're not, they're not worrying. If I give
Yeah.
them a little comment, they'll be like, oh, thanks, man. But like
Yeah.
the day ones are the kind of, and I like, there's a guy that I'm speaking to and he keeps kind of slipping and it's frustrating because I know when he gets it, he's gonna get it because he doesn't keep giving up. And but when I see he deletes all the previous posts, and I'm like, stop doing that, man. Keep that there as your accountability, and you'll eventually see how many times, like, because this has been going on for about 2.5 years, and I'm like, but I know he's going to get it eventually. It's just he needs to that the switch in his head, the switch to flip in his head. And it's like, but I say keep the posts, that you've done up to day 20, or I think his most was like day 50, but he deletes them. And I'm like, stop doing that, man, because you need to be reminded that, these are your continual kind of attempts, as it were. So yeah. So would you say, Derek, that you regret getting sober?
I would disagree wholeheartedly with that statement. Absolutely am grateful for it. I just had 5,000 days, like a week. And the only reason I know that is because I would see all these numbers and I was like, well, what's mine? I'm just kind of
Yeah.
curiosity. And you said it. I get like, I don't do it for the attaboys. I don't do any of this to be like, look at me because I need some self-fulfilling, selfish, feel good kind of thing. I do it
Yeah.
to be like, yeah, look at me. I can do it, so can you. Like it is
Yeah.
motivation to others. And that's why I do reach out to those day oneers. To me, they're the most important
Yeah.
because that's the worst place in the world you could be is day one. And that's not an insult or knock to anybody right now at day one. It's me saying, my heart goes out to you. You're in a tough spot, but
Hmm.
look at me. Here's 5,000 days. You could do it too. It seems impossible when
Yeah.
you're 12 hours sober.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't give up.
Yeah. Well, that's what they say in the rooms, isn't it? The newcomer is the most important person in the room, and
Yeah.
it's true. It's true because, even if they don't want to talk or share, just being there gives us all this kind of like, we're like, oh man, remembering back to when we were there, and it's like it boosts us as well, but it's like we
Yeah.
just want to fucking hug you, man, and go or
Yes.
and say, it's all right, you're gonna get there. Because if you do 2 days, that's like another 100%, and then 2 days is 4 days, and and onwards, and 5,000. I don't know what I'm on. I think like 1,700, maybe something like that, about there. So yeah, so I've got a few years to go
Yeah.
before
But I
5,000.
can't imagine day 1426 for you was a real struggle,
Oh no, no,
or day
1426 was
780.
like, yeah, it
You know,
was. I'm sure it was maybe summer last year, so it was lovely, yeah. But yeah, but
day three.
day 14 was, in fact, I set my Instagram up on day 13, and I was like, right, and I'd kind of dabbled in the community before, and I was like, and I set up a fresh account, and I think it was day 13, and I'd come out of hospital on like day 5, and I was like, and I had this idea to like post every single day. So I made like a number of little like memes and things and posted. So I got up to like 13 images, and then it was like every day, and I was like, it was holding myself accountable.
Mm.
And I did that for 500 days. So, and
Wow.
weirdly, from the day I stopped, 19th of August 2020, to the 500th day, it turned out to be New Year's Eve between, I think, 2021 and 2022. So it was just weird on that spot to be New Year's Eve. And I was like, right, and I'm gonna stop doing a daily one then. And it wasn't because it was becoming a pain. It was just, I just thought, what, 500 days is a nice place to kind of stop doing it daily so I can have a break and then do something a bit more meaningful content rather than just like, hi, it's Jimmy again. It's like it's like it was coming up with different posts to put every day. But I enjoyed doing it, and it helped me hold myself accountable. So do you, just before we go, do you have any recommendations on like quit literature book and a recovery type film?
Boy, I don't think I do. I'm not a big reader,
Okay.
unfortunately. It's
No, that's
taken
cool.
me
That's cool.
about 4 holidays to read Slash's biography, and before that, I read Napoleon's biography over 2 years. So I'm not a real good resource for that.
See, wait,
I
Derek,
just think
I
anything
have
if you,
I used to have an issue with reading, and it's not about like, it's just finding time to sit down and do it. But I use Audible now, and I go through books like there's no tomorrow. You know what I mean? Because I've got it in my ears while I'm working.
Hmm.
So I don't know if maybe if that's the kind of way to go. Because by the time I go to read a book at bedtime, I like read a sentence and then I'm fast asleep. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I read books, I listen to books while I'm working, and I just, and it's great. Someone told me I was cheating, and I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, but you're not actually reading it. I was like, but the knowledge is still going in my head. So like, how am I cheating? And I think they were just annoyed because I was then reading more books than they were. So it was like, okay. Anyway, sorry, carry on. So your film.
No, I was gonna say I do listen to the History of Rome podcast when I'm at the gym on the treadmill.
Oh,
Doesn't really
nice.
pump me up, but I just appreciate the.
Yeah,
I like history. I travel a lot and enjoy good history. But yeah,
yeah,
I don't really have any. I think stuff like this, like what you're doing,
yeah.
and podcasts is the way to kind of engage and listen and learn and hear what other people have to say. And I think if you can, start tuning into some podcasts and you
Hmm.
start reading a few blogs on sobriety, it's a good way to help you realize, you're not alone. There's other people out there that get what you're doing. There's
Yeah,
hope,
yeah, yeah. And
especially when you're struggling and you feel, that sense of all alone. That's how I felt at the start. Here we are talking about it openly and laughing,
yeah.
but there's a lot of people that right now are terrified, scared, that haven't Googled alcoholism, that haven't listened to a podcast because they're still in that state of denial and shame and
Hmm.
I don't have a
Fear.
problem, and they're drowning in their own misery.
Yeah. And I
And
think, you know, like AA, NA, the fellowship was fantastic for me, especially for that first year. And I liked the whole militancy of it. But I think, and I know there's no God aspect to it. It's not a religious, sect
Mhm.
or cult. It's just as God is your understanding. They use that word as a higher power, but I think it puts a lot of people off. And it's like, that people will be like, oh, I can't go to AA because I don't believe in God. And I'm like, it's not
Yeah.
that. But so like what you're saying, they're choosing not to go to AA, which could help them. So they're sat in their rooms rattling with this fear and this dread and this shame. So yeah, I agree. Like I think, and I know there's thousands of podcasts out there. So it's like, yeah, Jimmy will just add another podcast to the list. But hopefully the kind of conversational tone that I've got with the podcast
Mm.
is a little bit different and it's kind of, I'm getting great feedback on it. So it's hopefully going well. I know I'm not going to be Joe Rogan, but what can I say? If I get in at number two behind Joe, then that's fine. No, I'm not.
Well,
I'm not.
hey,
I'm not doing it for the accolade. I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it because I want, like I'm saying, when I was in the rooms and I heard people sharing, and I'm like, man, these stories are so good, but it's anonymous. You're only allowed to listen to those stories in there. So when I get people on the podcast, it's like, if you're obviously, willing to share your story, so it gets out to a lot more people. And I think the stories are what helped me when I was in my early days. So yeah,
I agree completely. And the other thing is, we're going to be more relatable to somebody in their 30s versus a 60-year-old that's been sober for 40 years, rambling on. And
yeah,
it's not to knock them, but there's a lot of that in the rooms too. People that just go for the sense of community. And I think out of loneliness, and
of course.
you hear the same people droning on every day. A
Yeah, yeah,
podcast like this is what I need because when I was first going to AA 26, 27, 28, and I'd sit in that room. But like I said, I felt like the youngest person there. And I'd always connect with somebody that was in their 40s that I could see being me in a few years versus
yeah,
in 30 years. And
yeah,
could their reality seemed more achievable,
yeah,
and they were
yeah,
having conversations I could relate to. They were, and I think that's the beauty of what you're doing here is a podcast like this is we're not spring chickens, but we're not a foot in the grave. And
exactly.
for anyone in their 20s and 30s, hearing what we've gone through in that, I think it's very relatable and useful for a lot of people that are struggling.
Yeah. And like
So you're doing good work.
well, thank you, Derek. I really appreciate that. And like, you got sober when you were in your 30s and me in my 40s. So like if there are people in their mid 20s and thinking, do you know what, I've got a problem, maybe I should stop it now because I don't want to be just getting sober at 40 or at 35 or whatever, and I think that's if it's going to help one person, then that's the whole point in it. So yeah. Is there
Yeah.
anything
And that
else you
was the
want to
point of,
go on?
was going to say that was the point of Young Alcoholic. It was to connect with
Yeah.
young people that feel like alcohol's having a negative impact in their lives. And that was what started it for me was to wanting to connect with young. people. And
Yeah.
it's not to discredit 50 plus
No.
crowd, and
Yeah.
I'm going to have to change the name of it to middle age alcoholic now to keep up with the time my own age. But the
Yeah.
point was to connect with young people,
And I like that,
and
man. Yeah.
and to sort of fill a gap that I wish had have existed when I was young trying to get better.
Yeah. Because I mean, I think I went to my first AA meeting when I was in my 20s. I'd lost my license through drink driving, and my parents were like, "Oh, you need to go to AA." And I went to the AA, and it was there was loads of old guys there, and I someone came up to me at the kind of break, and we were having a cigarette, and he said, "Oh, he said, I don't think you're an alcoholic." He goes, "You don't have that 5,000 yard stare." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I went home and I was like, "Yeah, apparently I'm not an alcoholic." And then I carried on, through my life, having lots of different issues with alcohol, having some good times, don't get me wrong, but like having a lot of issues, all alcohol related, from that, from those early 20s all the way to when I was 40, and it was very, very dangerous of that guy to say that to me. He didn't know me from Adam. And for this old guy to say, "You're not an alcoholic," like, why am I there? Obviously, I think I've got a problem with alcohol, or someone's told me I do. So that's why I'm there. I'm not just doing it because I want to join a new club. So I'm not saying that had he said I would have stayed. I didn't feel like I had a problem, so I wasn't going to stay there. But I did it to appease my parents. But I found it really kind of, almost disrespectful of him to kind of say that to me. But I saw it as a kind of green light to just carry on regardless. So yeah, yeah.
I had in my 20s a partner, a girlfriend, and I'm not uh, slamming her for saying it, just wouldn't have thought anything. But when I was maybe 25, 26, and I
Mhm.
said to her, I think I got a problem. And I remember her saying, "Aren't you a little young to be an alcoholic?" And it wasn't her fault,
No,
like
no, no, not
people
at
just
all.
don't associate alcoholism with the 22-year-old. They associate it with somebody that's 60 wearing a trench coat, drinking from a brown paper bag under a bridge,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
you
But there,
know.
but there are so many people that do actually have, maybe gray area drinkers, or they've got a negative impact on their life, but it's only going to get worse. And then by the time they get to like 40, 50, 60, that's when they do end up, under the bridge with the bottle in the brown paper bag. And it's like,
Yeah.
it could have been sorted out way, way before. So, I'm like going back, I'm glad that I got sober at 40 because I've got this lived experience. My life is just, imaginably better since what it was before. I'm getting married this summer. I've got a lovely
Yeah.
fiance, kids, and everything's just going well. I've got a great job, and I've started a nice little podcast, and I get to meet people like you and hear your stories. So, yeah, is there anything else you want to add to the listeners, for the listeners there?
No, I'm just yeah. If you think you're having a problem, don't be afraid to reach out
Yeah.
because you deserve a better life than what you probably are living right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will put all your details and links in the show notes. And yeah, thank you so much for taking the time out of your Saturday to come and have a chat with me, Derek. I really appreciate it, man.
It's been my absolute pleasure, and thanks a lot for having me on today.
Cool. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll chat soon, buddy. Bye bye. Yeah, that was Derek. Thank you so much to Derek for giving up his Saturday morning to come and have a little chat with me. Great conversation. As I said before, just so many similarities. And again, alcohol kind of got him on his own at the end, and I just wanted to kind of finish him off, but he didn't allow it, and that's the kind of he got out of it when he was 30, and he is just coming up for 14 years. I misspoke at the beginning, said he was coming up for 15 years, but either way, he was a young man when he got sober, and he's managed to turn his life completely around. Now, I'm not saying everyone is struggling with alcohol, but just life is so much better without it. You don't need it. It's not serving you any good or any purposeful meaning in your life. It's really not. You can do all the things that you think you can do um, without alcohol, going and socializing and doing all these things. Like, if you don't think that alcohol's a problem, go and do all these things without it. And if you find that difficult after a couple of attempts, then what are you admitting that you're using alcohol as a crutch to socialize? And that that shouldn't be the problem. That shouldn't be happening in this day and age. We do have so much more awareness of anxiety, and I get that people do have anxiety, and alcohol solves that, but it doesn't solve it. It only masks it's only treating the symptoms. It's not solving the issue. So people just need to try and gain a bit of confidence and go and do these things without alcohol, because if you're just letting alcohol do that for you, then you're going to eventually ruin your life, in my opinion. And I do always have to say it's my opinion, because I'm not an expert on this. All I can do is give people, my own lived experience. And listening to Derek's story, that's just, it's insane insanity when he's in a position to take flying lessons and follow a dream that not many people get a chance to. But rather than giving up alcohol, he gave up the flying. I forgot to ask him if he is still doing the flying. So pop a message on here and let us know if you've decided to take up flying again, Derek. But yeah, just like, why would we think, oh, well, you know what? I'll cut down my alcohol consumption, carry on with my flying, or whatever else it is in your life that's alcohol's holding you back from. No, we don't. We give up that thing rather than the alcohol, because A, we're lying to ourselves that we think that the alcohol's not the issue. And B, alcohol gets us in this trap, this addictive trap, where we think, well, I'll give up everything else. As long as I've got my booze, then my life is going to be happy and good. And that's just a lie. That's just absolute fucking nonsense. Excuse my Scottishness, but it is. And I'm just here trying to bang this little drum to help people have a little bit of awareness in the fact that it's not giving you anything good in your life. So I will post all of Derek's details in the show notes. I might even put a little link to that WHO article that I read. Andy Ramage had put a post on about how in 1988, alcohol was classed as a class 1 carcinogen by the WHO in 1988, and why is that not being like just hand in hand with smoking and tobacco? Why is it taking until now for people to start realizing that this thing that you're doing as a social pastime, leisure time is just it's a poison and it's going to kill you. So yeah, I will post that, and it just baffles me. I didn't have any awareness of or understanding when I was drinking, and I did smoke as well, but obviously I knew about the dangers with that. But I always knew that I was going to give that up at some point with alcohol. I didn't think I was ever going to give it up until it became a problem. So yeah. Anyway, guys, sorry about the little rant there. I will. Everything's going good in my life. All moved in, and life is good. Jen and the kids went away for the weekend that I was recording this, and it's been lovely, but I miss them all. That's the thing. It's like, it's been nice to just kind of get settled and put all my bits and bobs in their place, and just chill and get used to the surroundings in my own quiet time. But yeah, I just want them to come back, so they're back today, so I'll go and pick them up from the airport this afternoon. But yeah, other than that, see you guys next week. Stay safe, stay sober, and stay supportive. Bye bye.